Good afternoon. As you should know by now, I am not there. So I didn't want to leave you without any work or any explanation. So listen carefully, and hopefully you picked up the two worksheets. And I promise this one will not be 40 plus minutes. So I will make this as brief as possible. So if you take out the sheet, it says congruent triangles notes. We're going to go through that, and if you look on the screen, you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so we're going to fill this in, but we're going to do it in a slightly different way because instead of writing on all this stuff, I kind of have a couple of, anyway, just follow along with me. All right, now, actually, what I want you to do is just listen as we go through this, and then I will let you see the written down part. But more importantly, just take a listen to what I'm saying. Hopefully, it'll make sense. And then when we get near the end of each page, I'll show you what I need for you to write. All right, so let's see. Triangles are congruent when when that was beautiful. Anyway, triangles are congruent when the corresponding parts are congruent. Uh, and you just see that when you write it down. So if we drop down here, what are the corresponding parts? We have all three of our sides that we want to be congruent. So we'll find the corresponding parts, and we have all of these angles corresponding. Corresponding just means in the same location on both of the separate triangles. Okay, so for example, we will see that side AR should be congruent to the side YO, side AT should be congruent to the side BO, and side RT should be congruent to side BY. Okay, as far as the angle, we have the right angle here, angle A, and angle O should be corresponding. Angle R, angle Y are corresponding. Angle B and angle T, or angle T and angle B are corresponding. That means if we were to flip this triangle, just flip it across our y-axis, that's not really there. But flip it across the vertical line, these two triangles would be identical, and we're just matching the parts in the same location, same place. All right, and I'll show you how we could write those corresponding triangles. All right, and I'll show you how to write the congruent statement, because in order to show something is congruent, really all we're going to do is those six things we just talked about with the three corresponding angles, the three corresponding sides. If we show all six of those things, then we can come up and say that these two triangles are also congruent. That's really the whole purpose of what we are doing with the corresponding triangles or congruent triangles. Then we can find missing sides, missing angles, whatever we need. Now, how we can also do that, there are five methods that we're going to talk about. If I can show that all three sides are the same in both triangles, the corresponding sides, then I can say the whole triangle is congruent. I don't need to find this other three parts. I can just take three of these situations. I can do if I know that all three sides are congruent, if I know two sides and an angle are congruent, if I know an angle, a side, and an angle are congruent, or angle, and a side are congruent, or if we have a given right triangle, if I know the hypotenuse and one of the legs are correspondingly congruent, then I can say the whole triangle is congruent. I don't have to prove all six of those things. All right. Hopefully that made sense. But uh, let's go ahead and let you write for a minute. Okay, so this is what I just pretty much said. All right, So there we go there. Corresponding parts are congruent. That's the symbol for congruent. And I wrote the word out congruent here. That's what I was showing you. The sides are congruent. These are corresponding sides. These are the corresponding angles. This is how I would write triangle ART is congruent to triangle OYB. Okay, based off of these 6 things here. All right, that's how I would write my congruent statement. And those are the 5 rules. All right, let's see. And we're on the second page. Now, those 5 um, congruent shortcuts that we need, we're going to break those down real quick. All right, so SSS, I mean side, 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 that's just abbreviated SSS. So again, the corresponding sides of one triangle should be congruent to the sides or corresponding sides of another triangle. Okay, and you can see, even though this is rotated, I still want to find my corresponding sides, and then I can show what the 3 of them are congruent. I can show that my whole both triangles are congruent. So this side, this side, this side are congruent. This side, this side, this side, and this side. And if you watch the videos that I've attached prior to this, you'll also uh, be able to see what I'm talking about. All right, side angle side, SAS. 2 sides are included. 2 sides and an included angle of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding same sides and included angle of another triangle. Okay, so we got congruent sides, congruent, oh, congruent sides, congruent angles, and because this line is shared in both of those triangles, this also is a congruent side because they are the same side. Okay, and again, write all this down in a moment. Please don't try to write now because I'm not going at a pace that you could do that. So now we got angle side angle. So if I can find 2 angles and the included side of one triangle, that should be congruent to the corresponding same 2 angles and the included side of another triangle. And then I'll show you how we can write those statements. This is a slightly different. These 2 triangles are kind of sort of put together. So let's see what we have now. All right, time for you to write. All right, so side, side, side. The corresponding sides of one triangle are congruent to the sides of another triangle. And I already showed you the sides, this side and this side. Actually, if we were to rotate that around, we would see that this triangle then will start to look like that one, and we could easily find the corresponding sides. All right, so hopefully you're still writing. And you know what? I'll probably attach this because I don't know how long I need to wait. Some people write slower than others, but it's all good. As long as you get the notes, that's all I'm worried about. All right, so now we got the side, angle side, SAS. So sides are 2 sides and an included angle of one triangle congruent to the corresponding same size included angle. I think we just did that. I believe we did. Oops, my bad. All right, so now we got angle side angle. So now I actually have 2 angles and an included side. When I say included angle, included side, I just mean if I say included side, I have 2 angles and then there's a side between those. If I say included angle, I have two sides and then an angle between those. I don't know if that makes sense, but uh, we have a side here, I have a side there. If I'm going around clockwise, you see that I have that included angle. Over here, I have an angle, then I have another angle. Inside of those or between those two, I have a side because they are the shared sides. Then that's what I mean included. Included just means it's between either two sides or two angles. All right, let's see. So we could write that. All right. So now we've got two angles and a side. So angle, angle, side. So if we have the included side of two angles and a non-included, so they're not in between, they're actually either to the left or to the right of our two angles. So we should have a non-included side. That would go there. Of one triangle, they're going to be congruent to the same corresponding two angles and another non-included side of a different triangle. Okay, so here we have angle, angle, that is not an angle, side, and an angle. Okay, so if I rotate that a little bit, again, I have two angles side by side, and then I have a side. Okay, so in that particular case, we can say those two triangles are congruent. And now we have the right triangle. If I have a right triangle, then this is what I probably want to use. All right, I have the right triangle, so technically that is an angle that we know. And if we have any side, okay. And actually, we don't have any fill in the blanks here. If the hypotenuse and a leg of one right triangle are congruent to the hypotenuse and corresponding leg of another right triangle, then the triangles are congruent. We got the right angle, the right angle. So if I know either one of these, if I know this side and this side, then because that's a right angle, it does not matter that I may not know what that is. By default, I can say that I know what they are. Okay, because we got the right angle and the sides, those angles across from each other. Eh, they should also be congruent, but that's going a little deeper than what we need for this. All right, now here's some examples, shortcuts to prove that the two triangles are congruent. Okay, that do not prove. Okay, so you have something like this. Notice my angles are different, but based off of just knowing three angles, I really can't say they're congruent because I know nothing about the length of the sides. They could be similar. As you know, similar is not the same as congruent. Okay, here's another case. Sides, if I know two sides and an angle, I can't do that. All right, now, one way that one of my teachers taught me that, be honest, I've never forgotten. If I can write that as, if I flip that backwards, it says a word you're not supposed to say. So therefore, we'll just say that if it spells bad words, we don't want to use that as a theorem to prove something. Okay. Some of y'all will catch that later. All right, let's see what else. All right, here's what we need to write down. Angle, angle, side, that's AAS. And then you put in side, congruent side. And this is how we would write that as a congruent statement with the triangle. Here's our right triangle. Hypotenuse leg, HL. Okay, and that's how we would write that. And then, of course, those are the ones. Okay, and again, I'll put this as another attachment, probably in the Google Classroom, so you can see. All right, almost done. Now, let's write some congruent statements for these triangles. Okay, now some of these you may have to rotate, some you may have to reflect just to see, but what we want to do is we can show that all six of those conditions we talked about, if we can find at least three of them that are working based off of oops, based off of these five things that we know, then we can say the triangles are congruent. What we want to do is line up our angles and our sides, and then we can easily see. So anyway, long story short, just look at this and see if you can figure out how, based off of the congruence marks, this should be angle CAT, and it should be congruent to a triangle DOG. Now, if you notice, it says cat is congruent to dog. Anyway, that's just the way those fell out. Um, Over here, that's going to be triangle BAT congruent to triangle CAT. So if you notice, the B and the C are congruent. The A's are both congruent because it's bisected. And then T. So we got this segment AT. So that shares both triangles. So obviously they have to be congruent if they are the same line. Let's see what else we got. All right. And then we have angle TWH. That should be congruent to triangle RFO. And angle WHY should be congruent to triangle NOT. So triangle Y is congruent to triangle knot. I did not make these up, but it's actually kind of interesting. All right, triangle CRY, or cry, is congruent to triangle STY. So if you flip these over horizontally and then vertically, you'll have identical triangles. So we see that angle C and S are corresponding, angle R and T are corresponding, and angle Y, because they're vertical lines, and we know vertical lines are congruent, they're congruent. And then we have triangle RPS congruent to triangle RTS. All right, let's let you copy this down. So give you some time. There we have triangle CAT, triangle DOG, triangle BAT, triangle CAT, triangle TWH, triangle RFO, triangle WHY, triangle NOT, triangle CRY, congruent to triangle STY, and triangle RPS congruent to triangle RTS. Okay, let's look for the corresponding angles, corresponding sides based off of the tick marks for congruence or the arc marks or the little curved lines. Okay, and last page, well, last page before your assignment. So triangle congruence proofs. All right, what needs to be congruent to prove that these two triangles are congruent? Okay, so again, we have the six things. We have the three corresponding parts, the three corresponding angles. I just need to find that combination of those six, find three of them, unless it's the right triangle, and then I should be able to prove the triangles are congruent. So in this particular case, that would be option choice D. So looking at what we know, we have two sides that are congruent. We have one with the one tick mark and then the one with the two tick marks. So these are actually perfectly lined up. So what I need to do is find an included angle. So that's going to be angle A and angle E because these are lined up perfectly to be congruent. So I need to have those right there. That's all we got, choice D. Okay, over here. Uh, what needs to be congruent to prove these two triangles? I have an angle and I have a side. So I can either have another angle or I could have another congruent side, whichever. But in this particular case, I'm going to have option choice C. Okay, so I want to find another. If you just go through your answer choices, you'll see which one is not uh, available. Process elimination. If I took side JG, if I took side JG and side MN, then yes, those could be congruent. Only problem is the side across from an angle, we know it's congruent, but it don't just we don't know for a fact that they are the same size. So we can't really prove that just because the angles are the same. We need to have something that's not the side across from the angle or an angle across from the side. Okay, so that's why we would not choose option A. Okay, for option B, JA and MN, they're in different locations, so that's out. And then angle G and angle M, if you look at those, angle G and angle M, those are in different locations. So process of elimination is either A or C. And since A, we don't really know the length of it because they do not have to be the same. It has to by default be C. Okay. And then over here, we want to go with option B, pretty much for that same reason. We go through these. We have a known angle that's congruent and a known side that's congruent. We need to have another angle. So we have an angle side angle. All right. So we'll go with option choice B. All right. Well, you may have written those down. But anyway, if you did it, that's what you should have. DCB. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to attach this so you can actually see it at a slower pace, whatever. All right. This is what I need for you to do. On the second sheet that you got, congruent triangle activity, you are now, if the two triangles are congruent, they tell you that they're congruent, write a congruent statement and give the reason. If they are not congruent, write none. Okay, so just like we were doing, I think on page, actually on the page 5 that we were doing, we were finding what was missing. But on, actually on all these, we were writing the triangle congruent statements, but more so like on page 4. All right, that's all I got for you now. I will attach this at the end. Thank you so much. And we shall see you on Friday, hopefully.